Familiar with where the site is, south of downtown. Um, the site right now is currently zone PND. It has been zone PND for quite some time. So really what we're here for is just the approval of the planned neighborhood development plan. The zoning's already in place. So what we're trying to determine here this evening is, does the plan that we have meet the criteria for approval in the planned neighborhood district? There you go. If you could roll down one more, let's just give you a better idea of what the site looks like. So the site, and this is oriented north-south. North is actually to the left of the page. So, and that's a 13 that runs down the middle, Newark Road, and everything drains really from Newark Road down to the stream that's at the bottom of the site. There are two streams that run through the site. One of them is at the far south end, and one of them is at about the first third. And we've incorporated those kind of into the planning. They help break up the plan a little bit. There is some floodplain down at the bottom that we will not be impacting. And then the rest of the site is essentially open. Empty nesters, kids who've left. These are folks who are coming out of maybe a single family home. They don't want to climb up and down stairs anymore. They don't want to necessarily mow a lawn anymore, but they're not ready for a retirement community either. So they want their own home, but they also want to be mobile. They don't want neighbors on either side, so they don't want to move into like a duplex or something similar. They want to take that money that they've had built up in equity in their home, transfer it to something that they can continue to own until they're ready to kind of move forward. So, and then we have sub-area C, which is in the blue. These are more townhomes, and then sub-area D, which is in the purple, and this is a multifamily product. And then if you go to the next one, is laid out, the single family homes, the patio homes, the north, the multifamily, and the townhomes. It also does a good idea of showing how the open space ultimately is kind of weaving through the development, the path network that will carry on along the stream to the west, and then around the wetland area to the south to create kind of a nice trail system that will connect up all of the areas of the development. Move on to the next one if you could. So this is the open space plan. This just gives you a better idea because what we did is we took all of the areas that are essentially open and undeveloped as part of this, and we just put a green color on it. So you can see approximately how much open space is in this. Total open space is about 54 acres. So that's just a little over half of the entire area is open and undeveloped. So incorporating a lot of open space into the development, and then you can see kind of in red, the thin red lines there are the path networks that will run along the stream and run over into kind of the park area on the south end of the property, connect all those up, create kind of a nice little walking trail for the community. Next one is the landscape plan. Really what we're trying to indicate is just the level of landscaping and the buffering. Of course, we have street trees throughout the development, sidewalks throughout the development, and then we've got kind of buffering between the different sub areas, and then we also have buffering on the north side between the development and kind of the existing neighbors there. And then next one is just really kind of an enlargement of that open space, and that path as it kind of comes around forms a giant loop where you can access a couple of the different sub areas, the sidewalk system, and then get back on the path and kind of work your way around the stream area, have a nice little walking path. Next one is just really kind of an example of the entry features, just some landscaping around the entry features. I'm trying to go a little quickly so that you can get people into talk. Next one is signage. So we really just contemplate kind of a comprehensive level of signage and branding for the entire project. We really want the entire thing to feel like one development, even though it's kind of kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of different communities. We want it to feel as one. And so we're incorporating kind of a unified signage theme throughout the development, both at the main entries, and then even entries into the individual sub areas can have, you know, a smaller sign that might say, you know, the estates at Liberty Crossing. And so that's the signage. Next one, this is just a kind of a look at the landscape buffer along the north side. I know we've had some questions over this over the last couple of weeks from different residents and some other folks kind of wondering about the landscaping. So we tried to put together kind of an enlargement of the additional landscaping and the mounding that would go on the north side in between the development and the existing residence. And then lastly, this is just a kind of an illustrative plan showing the overall development. And I think in here we had some examples of the architecture as well. So as an example of the multifamily architecture. Next one would be an example of the townhomes to give you kind of an idea of potential architecture flavor. Next one, the single-family homes, and then the following would be the patio homes. And then the rest of it's really boring engineering stuff. I won't get into that from our perspective.
So for clarification, the only
Yeah.
properties that would actually be rented, what you called multifamily, that is,
Correct.
that would be butted up against housing. Correct?
Correct.
Have extra shrubbery.
Yep. Extra mounding, landscaping. The townhome product would probably be the patio homes and the.
I don't know if this is your topic or whoever, but I need somebody to touch on the well report.
Archaeological concerns? Yeah. I know I was here for the last meeting. There was a report done not too long ago as part of our due diligence to examine the site. A number of people have come forward and said, yes, they've found arrowheads and other things on the site. That's true, and I would imagine that's true of a lot of areas around Mount Vernon. Indians, Native Americans were in this area. They hunted these areas, shot arrows all over the place. What they're really looking for when they do those studies is they're looking for signs of settlements. So they're looking for areas where there was either an encampment, burial ground, those kind of things. There was a study done, and it's actually two separate studies, one a much older study and one more recently. The one more recently kind of verified the findings of the previous study that although there were encampments found in the area, specifically a number on Earth.
Who's next?
My name's Leota Holland, and I live at 226 Newark Road. I moved back to Mount Vernon 15 years ago. I looked a long time for the house that I'm in. I adopted my great-great-granddaughter and brought her to Mount Vernon because I thought it was a good place to raise a child. Now I get this letter, which they talk about widening Newark Road. When Ariel Foundation come in and beautified Newark Road, they chopped all my trees down and put little sticks in there. Well, anyway, they ain't growed yet. But anyway, I am concerned about the article in your, not only the widening of Newark Road, but if I refuse, then you can deem my property eminent domain and force me to sell my property?
Who'd that letter come from? I've not seen or heard a word of that.
That's not from the city. We have
Yeah.
no information as to the true faults of that.
Okay.
Ma'am, do you know who it came from?
Well, it's got all you people's names on it.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
It came from you, sir. Can I have you next at the podium?
Okay. Here, I can show you the letter I got.
Actually, we had one waiting in line. We have time.
All right.
Hi, my name is Tim Burton. I'm at 730 Brookwood Road. And I'll share my concern with the first gentleman. The biggest concern I think I have is the impact that's going to happen on New York Road. And that combined with the city code that you only notify people who are adjacent to the property, it affects a lot more people than that, a lot more people. And not just New York Road. New York Road is it's almost, it's almost impossible to improve upon the way the property is set so close to it. If you are going to widen it, then that impacts a lot of people. So what you're going to see now is you're going to see Newark Road crowded. You're going to see people taking Glen Road, Parrott, one of the others to get over to Martinsburg to get to Mount Vernon. So that was my concern, that the people on Newark Road didn't know what was happening. So I drafted a letter. I walked up and down New York Road, and I delivered it to probably about 100 doors. Okay.
And his name is on here,
My name is on
that
there.
it came from him.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. I don't think I've mentioned anything about eminent domain, but
There is the one comment here, eminent domain was mentioned. Improvements and eventual widening will have to be considered. This
Okay.
could result in eminent domain procedures and the forced sale of your private property.
okay. Yep.
So that's where that came from.
All right, and you know, you have to admit that would be a legitimate concern if we're adding 900 to 1,000 cars to that area. Okay. While I'm here, we're talking about that there's traffic studies that are underway. I think there's two parts of it that have been done. The third part is not complete yet. I don't know that the traffic study is addressing the area away from the proposed development. They're looking at adding turn lanes, going in both directions, but I haven't heard anything about the impact.
When this gentleman over here is done, I
Mhm.
forgot to have our engineer speak about the traffic study.
Okay,
He'll be two after you.
okay, all right. And when they were, can I borrow a slide? I don't know who was changing it. Can I borrow one of the slides that he was using? And it's the one that had the color code for the different types of housing. That's it, right? Okay. So initially, when we first started talking about this, middle of last year, we were looking at the townhomes and the apartments being on the west side, maybe a little further south, being along the creek. And then we had the meeting with the planning committee in January,
I
where
believe
it
you
was
said
where it was
January.
approved by the municipal planning
Correct.
committee. And
Actually, December.
they had discussed a reduction in the number of units.
January 12th.
Okay, January 12th. They talked about the reduction in the number of units, but that was about as far as it went. Well, I take it's a from what I heard and what I could see, that was as far as it went. And then they were kind enough to come to a Clinton Township meeting and discuss it, and that's when we discovered that because of grading, because of elevation and things like that, they couldn't put the apartments because of the slab and the size of the slab or whatever. They couldn't put the apartments where they originally planned, and now they're right up against 13, okay? So that's me, that's probably a few other houses that are gonna look right across 13 and look at a 3-story, 30-unit apartment complex where there was none. And that's just one building. There's gonna be several buildings that are around that, okay? So that's what they're asking you to approve, is to put a 30-unit, 3-story apartment building right across the road from my house.
All right, can you wind this up?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We talked about, they had mentioned property values increasing, and I know we had, there were some people who were here in previous meetings that were talking about property values going up. But if you can explain to me how diluting or flooding that area with 200, 300, 400 houses, how that's going to increase my property value. I would love to hear that. Okay, all right, that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is it? I am assuming we're looking at the same plan that went to municipal planning, correct?
Yes.
So the gentleman I thought made a statement that said that it was flip flop since municipal planning. Did I hear that wrong? Come on up. I just want to make sure everybody. So what you're showing us, and I've got it here, I just haven't dug through it far enough. Is this exactly what we looked at municipal planning?
Yes.
Yes,
Alright.
this is the plan that was approved by municipal planning.
So we haven't flip flopped anything since municipal planning.
We have not.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for waiting.
I'm Greg McBride, live on 15362 Glen Road, right on the corner of Glen Road and 13. And the only information that I was aware of was what very little was in the next to nothing Mount Vernon newspaper. So I knew it was south of Blackjack, but I had no idea where. All you kept stating was just this development. I forget what you were calling it in the paper, but
Liberty Crossing.
yeah, Liberty Crossing. So till tonight, when I saw that slide, I know exactly located. So it was, and I'm sure other people don't have an idea where it's exactly located either.
And it's like everybody. Thank God we have Knox Pages sitting here, who does a very good job, because that's about the best thing we have to getting the word out, along with the radio station. So we are a little constricted here how we can get the word out. That's one reason the city ordinance has determined exactly who could afford to send it to everybody in the city of Mount Vernon. So that's why it's always done the same way at all the meetings. But I understand your concerns.
And also,
in addition to the mailings, we also are required to place legal notices, and we do that as well.
Whoever can.
okay. Yeah, and it's going to impact me as a bunch because with all the extra employees and coming and going in the industrial park and semis coming up and down Glen Road, which it's stated sign no through trucks, and semis come up and down through there all the time, which I've made a few phone calls about, but it hasn't helped. Yeah, it's going to impact a lot of other people, the same as Mr. Spatafor had mentioned, in that whole south end of Mount Vernon. If the 13 needs to be widened also, it's already been stated, but it'll be taking some of my front property as well. And I years ago had lived on Coshocton Avenue and had my property taken in front of my house I had there as well. And if I didn't settle on what they agreed to, or what they offered me for my property, they would have probably taken that in eminent domain. So I can sort of see where this could possibly come to the same situation. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for your
I'm
patience.
not in favor of it.
Mr. Ball? Give me 4 minutes.
Brian Ball, city engineer, 40 Public Square, Mount Vernon, Ohio.
Your input, Brian, is as far as the traffic study, and then what you viewed in these plans. Also, there's question of the sewage connection on the west side. We've talked about this. There's a wetland preserve there. Address all that if you would.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So it is correct that they have would be about a 3-part traffic study. 2 of those parts have been completed. I have given them comments. The part that is not completed is I've asked them to evaluate the current speed limit at the site from Rangeline Road up to Blackjack Road 661. And so it's 45 miles an hour. we don't know if that's even correct for today's existence of the traffic level. So they're coordinating with the director of District 5 ODOT. They're doing the speed study. That's not done. Now, they have looked at the traffic to and from the site. They've looked at the turn lanes. Part of the understanding is they've looked at these intersections from Rangeline Road basically all the way through the industrial park and looked at the potential change. So what we're looking at is what it would be in the year 2033. So it is a 90-page report. I'm going to try to boil that down to a small summary. So in 2033, if you are at Rangeline Road, you would be looking at an additional 46 cars during the peak time of AM traffic. If the site is 100% developed and we're 10 years in the future. If you are at Blackjack Road, State Route 661, you would be looking at an additional 173 cars at that intersection during the peak AM hour. So they have looked at the capacity of all of these intersections. So I know there's a lot of concerns about widening 13, which seems like you're talking about like through the whole length of the city. The only thing that was justified is one turn lane into the site in one direction. The other turn lane is nearly justified. I would recommend that if we're going to do it, we build both turn lanes. Those would be carved out of this property. I don't believe they would, and in the existing right-of-way. They wouldn't be carved out of anyone else's property as far as I can tell. Now, going into town, based on this study and our numbers, State Route 13 has reserved capacity during peak hour, during off-peak hour. So at this point, it's not something we would even consider in the next 10 years or even further to change or widen Route 13. So do you have questions? Does this group have questions on traffic before we jump?
Who did the traffic study?
It is an independent consultant called Smart Services. They are out of Columbus, Ohio, and the developer
For the record.
has hired them to do the work.
So I heard you say that if there's any widening to done, most likely it would come out of their property.
Yep.
How do we assure that?
Well, again, if they're paying for it, I think the right of way is already it's so we would go through that process once that's done. I don't know. I'll look at the developer. I haven't seen any sketches for the turn lanes.
So
But in
right,
most cases, there's enough right of way to do that right now.
if we approve to pass what municipal planning did, what you're talking about can be done down the road
Yeah.
yet.
Mhm. Right.
And that would be something you would assure that was what we were asking to get done.
Yeah. Very similar. I mean, I just drove out to Apple Valley. They have a turn lane for Apple Valley, the gas station, to the, I guess that's the west of the entrance. Their property line looks like it's kind of moved over a little bit so that they have a turn lane, kind of a right in, right out on US 36. That change did not affect the properties to the south of US 36.
No.
So it's a recent example.
Just to clarify the speed study, so is it 45 all the way to Rangeline right now?
I believe so. Yeah.
So
It's somewhere
Well,
it changes to
close,
45.
close in
somewhere,
there, right? Okay,
Yeah, so
so
supposed to slow
So
down.
it's 35 past range line to the top of the hill?
no. Right. Okay. So it's possible that the traffic study or whatever, the third part could show that this needs 35.
Right, it's possible in the existing condition. So, for the record, ODOT has set this speed limit. They did a study sometime. Don't know when. I don't have a copy of it. So we've asked this company to do the speed study at the cost of the developer for the existing condition and the future condition. Yeah.
So, the number of additional cars potentially in 10 years at Blackjack Road is higher.
Mhm.
Is that something that we would light there?
There is
There
a
is.
light center.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant I'm sorry.
Blackjack,
Other
sorry,
side of it.
Blackjack and State Route 13.
Sorry. Thank you.
That intersection. So that's, again, that's using standard methods. It's possible that more of these people will have jobs south of town. It's possible less of them will have jobs. This is a standard ODOT procedure that they followed to get.
So it's 7:20. In sake of time, could you go on, talk
Right.
about the sewer?
So the sewer, the city has built the sewer to the southern limit of our corp limit on Industrial Park Drive. The sewer is just across the creek. Developer will have to get a permit from the city. They will have to get a federal permit to cross the creek. Accessing the federal permit, that'll go through all the other agencies that have jurisdiction. Again, the sewer has plenty of capacity and was put in for this area to be developed.
Would it connect at the preserved land?
No, it will connect south of, will not, and as far as what we've understood from the developer, it will not go in the preserved land. It will connect just south of Preserve.
Mr. Ramser, come on up. We're going to wrap this up here shortly, but we're going to continue in 2 weeks.
Mark Ramser, 104 Duff Street, Danbury, Ohio. I'm one of the 4 owners of the property, and when the sewer line was put in, there were 2 short easements that do connect in, both connect in, I believe, coming across from the area that the city of Mount Vernon owns. So those easements are in place for the development.
So we would not be disturbing the preserved land then?
Well, it would tie in, no, the preserved land, well, the preserved land, I think the sewer line is on the preserved land, but it's open space. So where it comes from the existing large sewer line, it would come across on those, one or both of those short easements over to this property.
Thank you. Okay. It's 7:22. We can take 3 more minutes. Ma'am, come on up the podium. I'll give you the last 2. While you're walking, I'm going to be talking. I'm going to postpone this to the next meeting with a plan to vote then. And I will ask for a 30-minute meeting at the next meeting as well. Doesn't have to be a public hearing, but I will have a 30-minute committee meeting. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Catherine Priest, and I live on Newark Road at 254. And I've lived here this time 6 years. I used to live here before. I lived here almost 30 years before I moved away and came back. I would like to know why I didn't get this letter until Saturday that says you are going to put in all of that down the road from me.
I'll have our city law director answer that for you.
You'd have to, is that the letter from, that's not the letter from the city.
No.
I have no idea who sent that to you, ma'am.
Oh, I do. It says it's got her name right on it, and I don't know who she is, but I understand she's my neighbor's daughter-in-law or niece or something. Her name is no, just a minute here. Let me get the right page. I'm sorry. Her name is Lacey Blankenhorn, who sent out these letters.
Yeah, I don't think that Ms. Blankenhorn sent those letters
Can we see the
out.
letter?
They were hand-delivered into my mailbox on Saturday.
Do we know who delivered those? That gentleman right there in the back, so you need to talk to.
Okay?
This letter was sent by Mr. Robert Everett.
Okay.
It's not Lacey Blankenhorn.
Okay.
That's
Thank you for straightening me out on that. But I do have a question, or a statement. Do any of you here know how many cop cars, ambulances, and fire trucks go past my house every single day? Some nights we have 10 go by going towards Newark. Some nights we have several fire departments. We have everything every single night. Now, how are you going to put up with extra traffic on that? I mean, people, it's already congested all the way through there. And I would just like to know, what do you, and also, I'm worried about my property. It ain't worth what we paid for it, and you guys probably wouldn't give me a dime for it. But you're going to take away all my land in front. You're going to take away my sidewalk, my one and only tree out there.
I'm sorry.
No, we're not. There is these letters are not from the city. These are people guessing what might happen. None of that is planned to occur.
How come then we haven't, since we live out in the area you want, almost, I'll put it that way, almost to the area that you want to build these? I'm not against improvements, new housing and all of that. I just don't want to have to be stuck at my driveway waiting for 20 minutes to get out, is my big thing. And I don't want you to take my land in front of me, my house.
At this point, there's no plan to take your land. The eminent domain was brought up by somebody else.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for letting me have my word on it.
So the 30-minute meeting would be at the end of the meeting.
6:45.
So we'll commence this at 6:45 in 2 weeks. First, what is the next meeting date? I have it.
March 3rd.
March 13th.
March 13th.
March 13th, 6:45. We'll do this again if you want to show up, and hopefully be finished then. Thank you. Out of time.
Is that it, Mr. Elliott?
We're done.
Because you are out of time.
I used a little too.
That concludes planning and zoning. We will recess until 7:30.
We got 4 minutes. Anybody puts anything on my
7:31. We'll now continue our legislative portion of the meeting.
I'm not sure we're on.
Please sit down.
We need order.
Use the hammer.
Who ordered?
He has my head.
Pizza. It's 7:31. We will continue. We will go into our legislative session. Mr. Hill, call to order.
Yep, bang the gavel.
We're good.
Mr. Mahan. Here. Mrs. Woods.
Here.
Mr. Francis.
Here.
Ms. Keener.
Here.
Mr. Hillier.
Here.
Mrs. Seabolt. Mr. Severance.
Here.
Roll's been called. Need to excuse Ms. Seabolt and Mr. Hawkins.
Motion to excuse Ms. Seabolt, Mr. Hopkins.
Second.
Moved and seconded to excuse them. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are excused. The invocation tonight will be from Reverend Ben Driver of Mount Vernon Church of Christ. Mr. Driver, if you come up, stand for the invocation, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray together. Father, you are a great, awesome, and glorious God. Father, we praise you above everything else, and we lift up your name. And Father, we ask that you would be honored now during this time. Father, I am so thankful for the city of Mount Vernon. I'm so thankful for the men and women that live here, that work here, that serve here, that give here in so many ways. And Father, I pray that you would lay your hands upon the city, that you would bless this city, that you would protect this city, and that you would allow us to live the lives here in this city that you would have us to live. Lives that are a blessing to those around us, that show love and grace and mercy. Lives that bring glory and honor to you. Father, I pray for the mayor. I pray for the council tonight. I pray for those who are in a leadership position that, Father, we believe you have placed in a leadership position. And Father, we ask that you would give them your wisdom. We know that your word tells us that if we lack wisdom, you give generously to all. And so we pray, we ask for that wisdom now during this time. I pray, Father, that those who are leading and making decisions would do so with justice and with mercy, with righteousness, with integrity. And Father, we ask for those in this city who are struggling, who may be lost in many various ways. We pray that those needs that they may have may be met. And Father, above all, we ask that those spiritual needs would be met, that those who need you and do not know you may find you. And so, Father, we are grateful for this time. We are grateful for all the blessings that you've given us. And we pray all of these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Council, you have your packet before you. You had your minutes, acceptance of the minutes. We have to have a vote on that.
A voice vote. Motion and a second.
So moved. To accept the minutes.
Motion and seconded to accept the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? See, we have no petitions or communications. We've received committee reports. Is there an acceptance on that too?
No.
You notice I haven't done this whole lot, right? I can only mimic so much of Bruce, and he gets away from me. No liquor control licenses.
No.
See, there's no proclamations. There's nobody here, person speaking of matters concerning the city. So we'll go into our legislative session. We have one resolution for a third reading. That would be resolution number 2023-11. We'll read these by title and name. So, Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2023-11, a resolution approving the PND Comprehensive Development Plan as submitted by Highland Real Estate and approved by the Mount Vernon Municipal Planning Commission for parcel number 66-00501.000 on Newark Road and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hillier.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. I move to postpone resolution 2023-11 to March 13th date, please.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to postpone.
That
Mr.
is,
Hillier?
that's the third reading. You're moved to postpone the third reading.
That's fine.
Mhm.
Discussion on the postpone.
I feel it's needed for the number of people we had that didn't get a chance. Council, there is, I did speak to a gentleman from Highland Real Estate and want to know if there's specifics that we'd like to hear at the next meeting. I did make a comment that, to maybe clarify about how the lanes would affect the neighbors across the road. Email me your input. I will have a phone conversation with him this week. Thank you.
And we have a lot of letters out there that didn't come from us. That stirred up a lot of stuff. Ms. Woods, I'm sorry.
My only fear is the number of people that were here that didn't get to talk, that 30 minutes is going to be enough.
Shall we?
I mean, you're going to give us each an opportunity to speak also, correct?
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, that's going to eat up probably half that time. That's my only.
45?
Probably better do 45.
Thank you. So back to the postpone, we need a vote.
We have a motion and a second to postpone.
Any more
the third.
discussion? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Francis,
Yes.
Ms. Keener,
Yes.
Mr. Hillier,
Yes.
Mrs. Seavolt, Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Motion been passed. Will
Thank
be postponed till the 13th. Next resolution is, we have one resolution for a second reading. That's resolution number 2023-18. Mr. Hill?
Resolution number 2023-18, a resolution authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director of the City of Mount Vernon, Ohio, to enter into contract with Gray Matter Systems, LLC, and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Woods?
Thank you, Mr. Francis. We'll give this its second reading.
Resolution 2023-18 receives its second reading. Next resolutions, two resolutions for first reading. First resolution for first reading is 2023-26. Mr. Hill?
Resolution number 2023-26, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to advertise for bids and enter into contract for the CDBG Stump Northview Water and Sewer Improvements and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Woods?
Thank you. We'll give this its first reading, and can we do a 10-minute committee meeting at the next?
Resolution 2023-26 receives its first reading. Next resolution for first reading is resolution 2023-27. Mr. Hill?
Resolution number 2023-27, a resolution authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director of the City of Mount Vernon, Ohio, to purchase a pipe fitter truck for water distribution and collection and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Woods?
We'll also give this its first reading, and I'll let Mr. Zick discuss this at that meeting.
Resolution 2023-27 is first reading. We're going next into our ordinances. We have no ordinances for third reading. We do have three ordinances for second reading. First ordinance for second reading is ordinance number 2023-01. Mr. Hill?
Ordinance number 2023-01, an ordinance to create the position of Human Resources Intern and declaring an emergency.
Move to suspend the rules requiring three separate readings. Take resolution 2023-01 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Suspend the rules. Any talk about suspension? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Francis,
Yes.
Ms. Keener,
No.
Mr. Hillier,
Yes.
Mrs. Seavolt, Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-01.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt. Any discussion on the adoption? Mr. Hillier?
Well, I didn't. Terry, we heard from everybody else when we discussed this in committee. It went through your office, correct? And then and it's all worked out in the budget? Thank you.
I'll go ahead and voice this. So there was some discussion before we started the meeting about, waiving the 3 readings and getting this passed tonight because we might miss out on a specific person. We've had that discussion here earlier that it's getting harder to get people to accept jobs before moving on, but this is one of those ones that, to create it for a specific person, there was some concern that that might be the case. Having said that, I agree, but I'm not sure we can wait to get this filled either, so we're kind of in this catch-22.
I understood initially from our HR director that it was a road. And that we would pass it on schedule. I'm concerned about that. If we are going to have this rotating on a semester-long basis, that's fine. I'm supportive of that. We all need interns. So I will not be in support of this tonight because I cannot pass this in an emergency measure.
Mr. Hilliard.
Well, maybe the mayor can speak to this. It is asked to be passed on the first reading. Is it something that could have been done a while ago that it didn't have to come to us as an emergency? Is this something that we decide all of a sudden that we've got the money, we got the time, we need to? How was this that it came tonight and had to be tonight?
Councilman, we're out of bandwidth. Can't keep up with everything.
I understand,
going
but
on.
did we?
And so we have been talking about getting interns. I would like to get an intern too, but I don't have the time to be.
I can speak to this specific case because originally in the budget that was passed, it was not originally funded. Mrs. Johnson worked very hard with Mr. Scott to find the money in her other accounts to be able to move it so that she could get it, and it was only after he had worked with Mr. Scott for several weeks to move the money that it was finally available to come in. And that's why, and we only brought the legislation to you after she was sure that it was properly funded.
So can I ask this question? If the ordinance is just now coming to us for a first reading tonight to create this position.
It's a second reading tonight.
I apologize, but it's not been approved. How has the interview process already happened that we know who's going to be in the? Just asking the question. We're worried about losing somebody.
I would have to say that Ms. Johnson didn't quite understand exactly how we do things with the council having to create things. So she got a little ahead of herself once she had secured the money. And I then spoke with her about what we needed to do to go through council to do that. And so I think that this is just a one-off thing.
Okay.
Because the other times she's been dealing with positions that have already been created. And so.
Could I clarifying question? Then this position has been posted. And that's out of order, but that's fine. I just wanted, if
I don't know how she advertised it, but she
It's
advertised
been hired. We're just
Okay.
waiting for her, yes.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Is that I don't know how she posted, how she solicited candidates.
Okay.
But I know that this candidate will work until May and then somebody else.
Mayor, do you know if there was a hiring process and I'm not upset that we had a mistake and it was out of order. I just want to make sure that we actually went through a hiring process. Let me defer to our engineer who's been working with it. Talk about it.
Okay, so we have 2 intern programs. So I have managed the Kenyon one before we had an HR department, and then we have what we call seasonal labor. So when Kenyon, I think it was 3 years ago, look at the mayor, they created this program. It doesn't fit our seasonal staff we have in all of our service departments. So they created a new program, and we created a specific position that's called Kenyon intern, and we packaged that. So traditionally we've had one for engineering and one for utility. So that's where I think the confusion happened when you look at the ordinance for pay for the summer help. That's formatted differently, and it's completely separate legislation. Now, Kenyon has a prescribed recruitment time and a recruitment period and all those things, so we put those things out, and then there's a whole list of people that want to come work for the city, and they can have any background. Because we are not asking, Kenyon does not have an engineering program, they don't have a utility program. What we're looking for are smart students that can do things a little bit out of the box. We post ours as they're going to process data and they're going to help with things. So we get this big pool of candidates, and then we interview the people. And I think what happened was, in the process of these interviews, we found someone that applied for the city job who was an HR rock star. So we've started to bring HR into this process because, I mean, it shouldn't necessarily be in engineering, but it just ended up in engineering because I sit on, an advisory board with the Nazarene and with Kenyon College, so we're working on those jobs all the time.
So you found this person through the engineering position?
Right, because they applied for a job that is authorized, but then we thought, hey, this is a perfect person to hand to HR, and then I guess she didn't realize that there are two types of programs that are
I
authorized.
guess.
I apologize, I did not have time to explain it. I just said, we sent this upstairs. And
Can I interject here? You didn't have time to explain, but we had a committee meeting.
No,
to HR.
He didn't explain, he didn't have the time to explain to Ms. Johnson, whenever he sent the person up here, that she had to go and get a position authorized and things like that.
Okay.
And I only caught that later in the process when she and I were discussing it.
I'll vote for this because I see the need. I know why we need it, okay? And I'm going to tackle that here in a second. But when we brought this forward and we way the legislation is written and the person's already picked, I see a nod in the back going, yeah, you guys, what are you doing here? It doesn't, if I would have heard what you just said about finding this person through the other process in engineering that came out before this, it made a lot more sense, and the lady in the back may not have shook her head.
Right.
The more information council can get prior to these meetings.
Yes.
Send us an email. Say, this is what we're going to do. This is what, I know everybody's busy, and so am I.
Mm-hmm.
But I went home today at 3:30 reading what emails I had coming for the meeting. Give us as much information as you can, so the lady in the back doesn't nod her head. It's like, what are they doing? That puts us on the spot.
And before we vote on that, I had a meeting.
I'm sorry, but
with HR and
yeah,
and
I
the
think
law
I saw you
director.
in the hallway.
You know, I
told you to
had
give
a
him a
meeting
hard
with
time.
him.
Remember?
So it's like now I'm hearing this stuff. That kind of stuff wasn't mentioned during this meeting. It was the urgency of how we could use this person, and now I feel like I'm being played because because I get the urgency. There's things that need to be done. I think an internship is a good thing. Okay, I think it's a good thing because it will allow somebody to get in there and is this really what you want to do for the rest of your life? You got 3 months or 2 months or however many weeks. Is this what you really want to do? Work in the law office and doing that? Is this what you? That's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing when we was probably talking at this meeting to say, hey, we're going to introduce this piece, John, and this is how we could really utilize these individuals. They've already got the individual picked. I mean, I'm in. It's like I can see that for the benefit of the individual that would be doing it.
Oh, yeah.
For their education and how it would benefit the city.
And if I just tag on the other part, I had assumed with what documents this person is going to be handling, we have something that we have this person sign off on for liabilities and everything else, so they're not walking up, handing out information or talking about it.
Right. So, for example, one of our first set of interns, we had 3 students work on trying to help us with the mess that is the billing system software. We had non-disclosure agreements. Later I had a phone call from the U.S. Department of Treasury. Our intern was hired at Washington, D.C. and I had to go through and help, answer all of her questions for her security clearance. So we're vetting these people to make sure that they are qualified to handle this type of data. And I will double check that with HR because that's what I did when I did it. So
let's all be on the same page
yeah,
here.
exactly.
Any more discussion on this? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener?
No.
Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt? Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Ordinance has been adopted. Next ordinance for second reading is ordinance 2023-02, and we are going to give that its second reading. Is this where I say ordinance 2023?
I think you need to ask for your committee meeting. Don't forget you wanted a committee meeting.
We'd like 10 minutes. I'd have
Oh.
asked for 10 minutes.
10-minute
I
committee.
haven't read the caption.
Thank you.
Sorry, we jumped ahead.
Haven't read the caption. Ordinance number 2023-02, an ordinance to create the position of law director intern and declaring an emergency.
Receives its second reading.
And we're going to ask for a 10-minute committee
Third,
meeting.
third ordinance for second reading is ordinance number 2023-03. Mr. Hill?
Ordinance number 2023-03, an ordinance fixing the number of hourly employees of the city of Mount Vernon in the water and wastewater departments and declaring an emergency.
We'll also give ordinance 2023-03 its second reading. Ordinance for first reading, there's 3 of them. First one is ordinance number 2023-07. Mr. Hill?
Ordinance number 2023-07, an ordinance fixing the compensation and benefits of certain employees of the Mount Vernon Municipal Court effective January 1, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Request suspension of the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take ordinance 2023-07 to its third and final reading.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for suspension. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener?
Yes.
Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt? Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-07.
Second?
Moved and seconded to adopt. Discussion on the adoption. Mr. Scott, I see you stepped up there, so I figured you got some news for us.
Well, I think it'd be worthy to at least have council abreast as to what we're doing here. This is our fourth and final piece coming from the municipal court for the annual year of 2023. We have chief probation officer, senior probation officer number 1, and probation officer number 2. These are all aligned with the 3% increase that we have given on this 2023 year for our employment. In section 2, you will also see $19.57 as $19.57 per hour in regards to our probation administrative assistant / deputy clerk. That is a part-time position and substantially funded by the J-RIG grant as well. So Judge Thatcher has sent his recommendation. These are his recommendations in regards. Council, you have jurisdiction on this as well, but we appreciate the support that the judge has given to us, and it matches with what we've been doing throughout this calendar year. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other discussion? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener?
Yes.
Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt? Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-07 is adopted. Next ordinance for first reading, ordinance 2023-08. Mr. Hill?
Ordinance number 2023-08, an ordinance establishing compensation for the wastewater superintendent and declaring an emergency.
Request suspension of the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take ordinance 2023-08 to its third and final reading.
Second?
Moved and seconded, suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener?
Yes.
Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seabolt? Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-08.
Second?
Moved and seconded to adopt. Any discussion on the adoption? We did have a committee meeting on this. I think we were pretty thorough because we have another piece coming up after this. They go hand in hand.
Can I just ask, Mr. Scott, did you get clarification about numbers?
Thank you, Mrs. Woods. Council, during the break, we did have a discussion, the HR department and others in related to the utility departments did give me some more calculated numbers. I can tell you the numbers did work. One was the $1,500 difference, okay, so I followed that one. The second one had a caveat to it if you weren't able to follow or did follow, and that is that the position is stated at a price. However, if in fact the individual passes the test and gets the credentials, then the extra amount would be added on. Okay, so that's the whole thing within that. Keep in mind, if you will, at your last meeting, we had a calculation of positions that we talked about, and the savings of realigning some people around in what we've been doing over the last few months here, and staff people in the utility departments. There was a substantial savings, about $25,000 overall in that reshuffling and makeout there. The differences in these dollars that we're talking about, so we're talking, let's make it around $4,500. So we've got the savings over the 2,500 plus. We're going to bite into that a little bit with this approximately $4,000 difference. We're still way ahead of where we would have been with any other realignment that we've done so far. So I think, on behalf of Mr. Hillier, who had the question, as well as Mrs. Woods, that we do have still another substantial savings over in this whole makeup design that we're working on. Thank you, Mr. Francis.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener?
Yes.
Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seval? Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-08 has been adopted. Next ordinance is our final ordinance for first reading is ordinance number 2023-09. Mr. Hill?
Ordinance number 2023-09, an ordinance establishing compensation for the Assistant Director of Distribution and Collection and declaring an emergency.
Request suspension of the rules requiring 3 separate readings. Take ordinance 2023-09 to its third and final reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded for suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener?
Yes.
Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seval? Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-09.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt. I was waiting. Moved and seconded to adopt. Discussion on the adoption. No discussion. Mr. Hill?
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener?
Yes.
Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seval? Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-09 has been adopted. That concludes our legislative session, so we'll move on to remarks from administration. I'm only going to do this by face. Tried to copy the names down. So, Mayor, we'll go with you first.
Thank you, Mr. President, Pro Tem, and Council. A few things, just updates I want to provide to you. Where did I put my, okay. MORPC is providing a State of the Region presentation. It is a purchase ticket. It's an event on the 31st of March in Columbus. Anyway, there are still some available seats. Anybody who's interested, email me and I will forward you the information. That will, I'm sure, be quite spectacular. Just one other thing on the pool contract update. We got Mr. Hillier sent an email before today's meeting wanting an update on where we were with the pool management company. We have been finishing our due diligence with selecting a company. We do like one company in particular. We have a little bit of discrepancy in terms of where we are in terms of what the contract amount is going to be. So we're working with them to determine how many guards we actually have to have. There is some discrepancy in terms of, does the guard have to be at the bottom of the steps, the slide, or at the top of the steps, or both? So we're working with the Department of Health on that, as well as the potential contractor as well, to come together on some of those arrangements. We're also looking at taking over or assuming the opening and closing portions. Obviously, the swim lessons are sort of on the table as well, to kind of come to a little bit closer agreement on what we can do to make the budget work. And we're also entertaining the possibility, quite frankly, of some advertising options for people who might want to put banners up to be able to help offset some of these costs. So we're looking for those sponsorship opportunities as well. So anyway, we do have like I said, we want to move here pretty quickly. This is on our radar to get this done. But yeah, that's what I think I have. I think if there's anything else that I needed to remember. Oh, also we're looking. We planted seed in asking for a private funding foundation to maybe help with helping us come together with the missing the funds that are still unaccounted for. So we're still working on that. We're close, and I would suspect that we would like to offer that contract within the next couple of weeks. Council, I believe, has already approved the contract, so you guys we're just ready to come together on the number, and then we'll let you know who that is. So anyway, the Lyme status, I know is another question that Mr. Hillier had sent to us. I'm going to defer that to Mr. Ball when it's his turn. And I have one more thing that I did want to bring to your attention. And as council, I sent you a letter with regard to the local government fund. This is something that we used to get a substantial amount. I mean, when not accounting for inflationary times, but back to 2007. I want to thank Mr. Scott for his data collection and putting the numbers together. But the local government fund was significantly cut in 2011 when after the Great Recession. It went from 3.68% of the general revenue fund at the state level down to 1.66%. And so this is what goes directly to municipalities and other political entities. Of course, we get the benefit of receiving county disbursements based on a formula that Mr. Scott and Margaret Ann Rule put together, in addition to funds directly from the state. This goes in our general fund. There are no strings attached to these. And I would like to go back and get some more of those local government funds now that the rainy day fund at the state level has capped out at $3.5 billion, and there seems to be a surplus of money at the state right now. So I can tell you that the Ohio Municipal League is lobbying very hard. There will be a lobby day in March 12th or 13th. I can't remember when it is, but I did meet with State Representative Darrell Kick today and State Senator Andy Brenner and spoke at length about this. So they know that it's on the radar, and this is something that we quite frankly could put to good use in leveraging funds for other projects as well. We know where we need to put our funds, and you guys know where we need to leverage funds for grants and so forth. And so I'm going to be bringing forth legislation asking you to consider a resolution in support of returning the local government fund to its, at least at its original level of 3.68% of the general revenue fund at the state. And I will have that for you at the next council meeting. So anyway, with that, Mr. President, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Scott.
Nothing further, Mr. President Pro Tem.
Mr. Stoller.
Nothing further.
I just had to say your name, point you out. Mr. Rowan.
I have nothing, although I do believe if Mr. Hillier wishes to hear about the Lyme, we can call Mr. Ball up to get him to do that right now.
Specifically, I asked about, we were supposed to see legislation to go out to bid to haul the line. That's what the email was about.
No, I believe we have, I think it was last calendar year, we did authorize the, I believe Tom was still here because he brought it to council. I had proposed a bidding process. He brought to council a sole source to United Aggregate that was approved, and the contract was already signed.
I don't recall it that way. Do you, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Maybe you can forward me that email. I remember the conversation, Brian, we had, and I said to Terry, I said, okay, this 150,000, I don't think it's going to get spent because of the weather. So that 150,000 then goes into next year's budget. Is that correct?
We have a contract for 125,000.
Whatever that number
yeah,
was.
So
That's here.
I
But then
yeah.
I said, so then we won't go to an emergency. We'll put it out for bid. Is that correct? Have we ever seen legislation to go out to bid?
No, you had we will look it up and send you an email, but my understanding is a sole source contract approval was completed last calendar year for work in this calendar year by city council.
I'd like to see it. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll find it. We'll find it and email it to you, because I know when I went into the system, the mayor asked me the question, I went into our financial system, and there is a purchase order for $125,000.
I'm not disagreeing about purchase order, but was there?
Yes, there was.
Was there
99% sure.
legislation that said?
Well, I don't think Mr. Scott would have approved the purchase order.
Yeah, he would
without
not
the
have approved the
legislation.
purchase order. So
Well-
there is a check through that.
So you'll show me the legislation
Yes.
where we voted to go out to bid.
Yes, we will bring. We will find the legislation. Give you the number.
I'll be wrong if I am. I'll do it at the next meeting.
Right.
Thank you.
You know, so Lacey and I, we always go through those checks. So, and so does Darren.
That it, Mr. Browns?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to remarks from council. Mr. Severns?
Yes, I just want to thank the police chief for being here tonight and giving us a report. Looks like a lot is happening in that area. Brian, I would like to have us talk a little bit about the speed out there on 13. I'm particularly interested in the topography of that road versus where it's 45 and where it turns to 55, because I think there are two entrances and exits right here, correct? It may be that the one further south is 55 mile an hour at that point. And I just want to confirm that and just kind of see what that could look like. I just think hopefully our traffic study will help us to maybe get all of that zone down to 45 mile an hour. You know, but I don't know. I mean, I think that's up to ODOT, but I'd like to kind of see where those lines are, where the speed changes, if we could get some graphics on that or something. Thank you.
Ms. Woods?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Mr. Hillier?
Thank you, Mr. Francis. First of all, the reason I hesitated at the end there for your second, I was trying to think of some nice words I could say about you at the end. And you
Couldn't
interrupted,
find
and
it,
I
could
lost
you?
it. No. I do appreciate listening to you tonight and how you did this, how you went from pro tem to your job, back to pro tem, back to your job. You know, and all the time I'm on here, I've never wanted pro tem.
My head is spinning.
You did a wonderful job, I just will say, especially tonight. Council, like I said earlier, I did give my cell phone number out to one of the gentlemen with Highland Real Estate, and I said, we need to talk. He wanted to know where I thought we were. I said, well, I haven't asked council. That's not what I do. I didn't ask what their vote was. But I said, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of things put out there that, such as, you know, if you put in 2 turn lanes, whose property is that coming off of? And I'd like them to state that out, and that's one of the things that I'll talk to them about on the phone. I made a couple other notes. If you have things specific that you'd like them to answer that was questioned tonight, please email me. I would do it soon, but I'll probably get that call tomorrow. But I'm not saying do it tonight. I'll just put it off till I'll set a later date. If you have thoughts, text me, email me, whatever it is. Thank you. The water park. I am concerned. School's out in 3 months. May 31st, the last day for Mount Vernon. If we just took this to second reading, that gives this company that we would hire 2 months to put this together. If we start in June. March, April, May, June. So two readings is going to take a month.
What?
It's already been approved.
You've already approved.
No, I understand that. My point is, but you said you're going to try to bring something. Do you? I don't mean approved. Do you think we have enough time to put this together?
Yes.
To open out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it's approved to go to contract. There's section 2. We started this last September. That's my concern. I hope we can get it. The dollars, I hope you got that, because I hate to see a price that we have to put on it that people can't afford to use it. So I hope that, I'm glad you see you're working on that as well. And that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Mahan?
Thank you, sir, and thanks again to Chief and the engineer, and a lot of significant discussion tonight. It isn't, city council isn't always easy, but I had an opportunity to have some easy and fun time with the kids from Pleasant Street Elementary last week. They were interested in city government, and I got to talk to the 3rd graders there at Pleasant Street Elementary. And I asked them what they liked about Mount Vernon and if they could see something different. And the 3rd graders liked the dog water fountain And I believe that's the fountain adjacent to downtown there at MVNU. And they like all the green space. Someone actually used the term green space. So
Wow.
they've been educated, and they like Foundation Park, Mrs. Keener. So good for Parks and Recreation. They love the back of their school playground. A couple students appreciated the hospital. They felt like Knox Community Hospital was a good thing in Mount Vernon. And one student liked the farmer's market and eating peppers. So whoever's responsible for the farmer's market and him getting to eat peppers, he passed along his thanks. They asked if we could have another China buffet. That gave me the opportunity to discuss private enterprise and private property and how the city would create conditions that would make restaurants want to come here, but I could not promise a new China buffet. They were interested in what was happening with the old middle school, and we've seen new windows going in, and so even students in 3rd grade at Pleasant Street Elementary are interested in what's going on over at the old middle school and that development. They would like to see another park, ma'am, and they want tire swings and lots of extra swings and snow cones. So if you could please put that.
Me too, me too.
Please put that on the parks agenda. That would be great. And thank you, Mr. Francis.
Thank you. Snow cones.
Snow cones.
Need them this summer up here.
Yeah.
Ms. Keeler?
I just want to clarify my vote. It's not that I don't support the intern. It's just I was not comfortable moving forward with how that was presented. I will say that the Pack United event that we had was a lot of fun, and that the chief is much better at throwing axes than I am. Thank goodness. I mean, you don't want me as your chief of police. But I also would just like to put out there, a lot of people who have come and talked to us about the developments that are happening are often saying we don't need new houses. And I continue to point them to the knoxadf.com website. And under data, there is a Knox County Housing Demand Survey from 2021. And that has a lot of great information that I would just encourage anybody who has questions to go out there. They do a lot of great studies for the city and for the county. And I just wanted that to be made very public. And that's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ms. Keener, I'd like to know publicly if you're going to promise the snow cones. Is what I want to know.
I will. I brought snow cones to the softball game for the police department, so that I could guarantee.
Good. You heard it.
All right. I'd like to again thank the chief for being here. I like the booklet you give us, the report and stuff. It's very informative. I liked your discussion. We might have to have, I probably won't do coffee, but it'll keep me up late. But I appreciate you being here and voicing Knox Pages for being here. Again, like Mr. Hillier said, that's the best we have with media, and that's where everybody is social media. So they're not in the newspaper anymore. So we get that, we see it all the time. So we get our news, and it's from Knox Pages. It's no longer from the Mount Vernon News. Knox Pages is our news. I'd like to thank everybody that showed up. Hope Bruce didn't get bored too bad watching us, because he was watching.
Sure he was.
Whenever I'm put in this place, he's watching. You know, I do those eyes was on me. And,
He was
and
complaining
hope
about the
Janice
YouTube
gets to feeling better. And just some, I have little words of inspiration and motivation that I'll write down sayings, and I'll just tack them all over my room and my workplace and stuff. And I've got one that I've written down, and I actually lived by it this morning. But it's pray as if everything relied on God, and work as if everything relied on you. So I try to live by that, my life that way is I pray like everything depends on God, and I work like if I'm not doing it, it's not going to get done. So if we move that way and teach people to move that way, things just happen, and it's good stuff. So with that, a call to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And don't say no.
Here alone.
Mayor, just so they're aware, it's 6:30, the live stream is not working.